Hello and welcome back. It's kind of a two-parter. This is sort of the second half. I think that's the first time that we did that. That sort of became a thing. I think that's actually always written by our guest today. The longer version, much longer version of our conversation is available on my Patreon, as well as other bonus content. My name is Ashley Clements.
And my name's Kate Rorick. And these are the Look Back Diaries.
They sure are. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you for having me.
Well, of course. I've talked so much about all the romance that you brought, and still no boys on the show yet. But this one is literally called Darcy Wickham Drama. So,
yeah, boys are implied. Boys are heavily implied.
Boys are discussed. It's funny because actually one of the comments on the last episode was, I kind of forget that Caroline and Bing and Darcy even exist at this point. And I was like, yeah, I guess it's been a while. And it's like, oh, no, here we are.
Let's bring it back. Bring it back
in. We
will
not let you forget the primary plot of Pride and Prejudice. Arguable what the primary plot is of Lizzie Bennet, but
personal growth.
Yes, that is exactly it.
Personalized growth with a romantic payoff, I think, is probably.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You should be a writer.
Wow, I never thought about that. I really should.
Let's take a look back at the drama. And what a face. We're ready for the drama here.
You're very excited.
So we're back from Carter's and my parents are asleep.
You know, it's not my fault what face I make as I'm about to speak.
Listen, there are a couple of jerk faces that you have had previously that are...
Yeah, no, I'm like a derp face queen.
Nor am I drunk.
And note, of course, this is the first time I think we ever did
like a wardrobe.
I'm wearing the same episode because I filmed this right after the last episode.
Yeah, but I mean, it's so incredibly important that you get this out because it's all about the Darcy Wickham drama.
And I can't go to sleep until I have discussed this.
Couldn't possibly wait to the next filming. Very important. There's the lovely Laura Spencer.
I know. Well, we did get some fun fan art of the boy band tease.
There was a note on the
Or a girl band, but there's going to be a boy band joke soon. Many jokes about bands.
Well, is it when your face goes like this? Because that's like one of my favorite of your memes.
Okay. Let's not think about that.
What's it like being a meme?
The memes. I don't know. I don't.
Let me set the stage. We're all at Carter's bar. George Wickham is off fetching us drinks, which was very gentlemanly. And had the added
except for the fact that you should never trust anything Wickham gives you to drink, but okay.
True enough. But this is a very, fun example of tell, don't show, which is how we had to operate on our show.
Yes, because you couldn't do a lot of showing. You had to sort of motion via the telling.
Well, who would not be in love with Jane Bennet? I mean, going to the bar like that, that's cute. She looks cute. A hussy. Indeed.
Yeah.
Of course, we are hinting here at the, idea that Jane's actions could be misinterpreted by an idiot.
Yes, a little bit of foretelling, a little foreshadowing that Jane is perhaps too nice for her own good.
I love here that Jane is the one who initiates the costume theater. No, you're an unreliable narrator, and I am going to do this properly.
You need an outside perspective. Lizzie cannot see what is actually happening with Darcy right now. And
I mean, Jane is a little bit of a Lizzie Darcy shipper.
You have to understand, everybody that was in their orbit became a Lizzie Darcy shipper with the possible exception of Wickham.
Wow, you two don't see this, huh? Well, or just Lizzie, because Darcy obviously does.
Well, Darcy sees it, but really resents it.
It's I hate that I have feelings for that weird girl. That's such a good bit. That's a very good bit.
I'm sorry. I have to go.
I love
honestly
that George
can't tell if
Wickham's
Laura's
theater with a pair of goggles.
Yeah, we were swimmer. I mean, what we're gonna do? Take off our shirts?
I mean, it's not that kind of show, people.
We're only going to make one person do that.
Yeah. And it's the right person.
Indeed. I feel your love of the novel in like the dramatization of like how do we update this into like the kind of like modern gossip that might be then there that.
Could you imagine doing this? Like, I mean, could you imagine doing this format now, 10 years later, when we like the transmedia is even huger, it's all exploded. These would be like TikToks, or everything would be
Yeah.
happening on Zoom. And yeah, it's just absolutely like I can't even process it with my old person brain anymore.
Yeah, it would be a very different show just in terms of the medium, I think. Love
Mhm.
love a Harriet the Spy reference.
Yeah, sketch
Um,
bag. Mhm.
one of my childhood favorites, but it does make this show feel like this little time capsule. That's come up for a lot of people when we
Yes.
discuss it, that they're like, oh wow, this is so 2012. And yeah, that's
But
when we make
in
it.
2012, it was like, oh, this is such a cool and innovative way to tell this classic story. So
Right.
it's
We were
like,
using all of these conventions that were being used
mhm.
on YouTube in terms of the style of the vlogging, but people were not adapting classic literature
But
until
also
a lot of people did.
much like Clueless did with Emma, because it's such a timeless story, even though it has the conventions of the era, like it still is so watchable and so enjoyable.
I
At
mean,
least,
look,
at
I'll
least
take
for
any
me.
comparison to Clueless because I think that is
Mhm.
really a
Mhm.
flawless film. I mean,
I agree. I agree right there.
I have kind of avoided talking about the
Mhm.
book because to my brain, it didn't exist at the time that we're making this episode. But
Well, it did
they
not
bring
exist at
up
the
the
time.
book, exactly. They bring up the book all the time in the comments. It's funny because there are times that I point out lovingly plot holes or just sort of like, well, I mean, that's just a stretch of believability. And people in the comments are like, actually, it's explained in the book. And I'm like, yes, because Kate watched the same thing that we're watching and went, well, that's a hole. I can explain that. And so, would you like to talk a little bit about the experience of writing what you
The
yourself have referred to as a retcon?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, like I went in writing the book. We decided to write the book like when the series was almost over. So it was
Oh, I don't
very
even
much
think
like
I
a
knew that it was talked about at all before the series was completely over. So sometime towards the end of the
very,
series
very
there was
close to
book
the end of
talk.
the series. There was book talk. Um, and like I wrote up like 3 pages of what the initial entry would be, and like in a synopsis, and said, hey Bernie, if you wanted to do a book, this is what the book would be. And he's like, cool, let me take this piece of paper to this major publisher over here, and by the way, we have a book deal, go ahead.
I mean, that's Simon and Schuster because I
Yeah.
think that says so in here. And also I remembered that that's who paid me for the audiobook.
Oh, and yeah, there's a whole shelf of them over there, so it's like, yeah.
I only have one.
I've got them in Portuguese.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
fun.
But the process of writing the book, basically what I did was like I made a massive calendar. Like I literally went into
And
my
if you
calendar app.
have not read the book, it
Mhm.
is diary entries with
Yeah.
dates.
Yeah. So I made a massive calendar of like, all right, this is what was posted this day. So she recorded it this day. So this particular activity had to happen this day. I mapped out the entire story on the calendar. And then I was just like, so this weekend is when the tour of San Francisco would have occurred. This is when she must have broken her phone. This is this is the first moment she saw Wickham, that kind of thing. Like I made that map. And that made the writing of the book really easy because I didn't have to question what was going to happen next. It also helped that the book had been written 200 years ago, and I knew it pretty well. So
As we've discussed, memorized.
a little bit.
But
Um,
you, having written several novels, as
mhm,
we discussed the last time you were here,
mhm,
this had to be a very different process because, I mean, as you just said, like you were taking established information and making a calendar of it. What was it
mhm.
like having this sort of template, but yet also free reign to kind of fill in whatever you wanted?
The comment that I got the most about was about Jane and Bing, and Jane's quote I called in the book like 72 hours of worry. Like where did that come from? Kind of thing. I was like, the realization, me staring at it over the course of like they spent like a month at uh, at Netherfield. In Pride and Prejudice, they spend like 5 days at Netherfield, and Jane's bedridden basically the entire time.
And the conventions of the time were
And the
also such that,
conventions of the time were
I mean,
different,
there's
but
a
these are
whole plot
two.
line about Lydia being ruined. So obviously, no premarital sex would occur.
Yes, but in modern day, and there's two consenting, adorable, mad about each other 26-year-olds probably would be. So yeah, that's
No, it's so funny because I think I'm probably the first person who said anything to you because I
yeah.
read the book before it was out, and
Mhm,
also you weren't part of the writing team yet when we
mhm.
shot those episodes. You joined right after,
Yeah.
and at the time I was still like a little overly attached to Lizzie, and we had all these discussions at the time that they were not having sex, and so
Mhm.
and like the book was at this point published. I mean, like,
Yeah.
like I'm had done the audiobook. It was like, oh, this is in the book. But
Yeah.
uh and it makes so much sense. Like now I have enough distance to look at it all and go like, well, of course they would have been having sex. And like that's a very it's very like well done dramatically. But at the time I was like, but they didn't. That's what we discussed. And I think what was hard for me, and this is where I was still a little overly attached, is I was like, but that's not what we were playing. But the fact of the matter is, it works. Like, it doesn't, while I was not intentionally playing that, when you put the two together, it works. It all works. That's what makes it a very good retcon.
Thank you. You also had to play in somehow that Jane is somehow emotionally not fully open to Bing in a way that she should be. And this is something that she would possibly keep to herself, something that could sow doubt with Bing, and that voice in his head that sounds suspiciously like Darcy of being like, see, she's like, go back to medical school. She's not there for you, kind of thing. Like, you needed to have a little bit of fracture there. That is how I came to that conclusion. But that's like one of the larger ones.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the biggest one that was
Mhm.
like shocking to me at the time, and very exciting for the fans who I think everyone at this point who's watching this show
Yes.
has heard that, if nowhere else than in the comments of these videos. But look, if you haven't read this, there's an audiobook where I read it to you, or you can use your eyeballs.
Or if
There's,
you
there's,
speak Portuguese, it's in Portuguese. So you can get that too.
are those the only two languages we're in? English and Portuguese?
I don't know. Those are the foreign books that I got copies of. So that's
We
like,
the Lizzie Bennet Diaries did have a really big following in Brazil, so it does
yeah.
make sense for it to be in
Mhm.
Portuguese.
Writing this book was very different because I knew the plot beforehand. The plot was handed to me as opposed to me having to figure out the plot, which even with the Lydia book, Rachel and I had to sit down and say, all right, I think this is where we have to arc this story and we have to do it ourselves. But it was a wonderful experience getting to write it. I wrote it pretty darn fast comparatively to what I normally write, possibly because
Well, it was
I've
sort
spent
of
the past year
outlined
writing you anyway.
for you.
Yeah.
Well, and that's an interesting, you mentioned writing the Lydia book too, that like, that's the only time you've ever co-written a book, right? That like you've
Yes.
collab
Yeah,
and so
and it was very much that was working with Rachel was very much a collaboration, like because she had such a strong emotional attachment to the Lydia character. Like I wouldn't want to have written it by myself. I would not have done it the same amount of justice. So yeah, we sat down. We were like, all right, so this is sort of the story that we want to tell. We want to spend some time here. We want to spend some time there. We want to get a Lydia to this emotional place. Here's how we're going to divide up the work. So it was very collaborative between the two of us.
in regards to this episode, there's Darcy Wickham drama, and as we previously discussed, you have a penchant for the romance side of things.
I was kind of brought in for that because they covered a lot of other ground, but they're like, oh, hey, romance now, let's come here. You do the kissing stuff. Makes us
Yeah,
feel
it's
weird.
gross. But I don't know, was this fun for you knowing like we know that Wickham is so bad and yet
Yeah, but every single interpretation of the character is different. So I
Yeah.
think that that's the fun part, is finding who Wickham is now. He was a self-serving sociopath in the past who felt like he was born of the wrong parents. He should have been a gentleman. He should have had everything handed to him. How dare everybody, not hand stuff to him. Here he's sort of like a I'm going to take what's mine type person. And it's a very narcissistic quality, but he's developed himself to be admired. And we do admire him having developed. But it's also
Yeah, we're going to objectify Wes a lot on this show, and I'm
in
not
the
going to
next episode in
apologize
particular,
for
I
it.
think. First of all, it should be established Wes Adderholt, very, very nice young man.
We will not stop saying very kind things about Wes Adderholt, the person, who is very talented and also very good looking.
I find Wickham interesting because he's obviously a wrench to be thrown in, and in Pride and Prejudice, he's fairly two-dimensional. Like, he presents
Yeah.
one face and he's another. In this one, especially in the Lydia diary, Lydia Bennet, Rachel took Wickham to a place of grooming and develops a toxic relationship, and you see it happening on screen. And that was incredibly smart writing. That is quite honestly writing that I am not capable of. That was all Rachel. So the fact that that is what she turned Wickham into, I'm more than admiring of.
Well, and I think that, because the show was not originally conceived to have the Lydia Bennet spinoff, that is all stuff that evolved, but it is incredibly affecting, and it does create this whole other dimension to the Lydia story that I don't think that any other version, even versions that may sort of redeem Lydia, really show us her being a victim in a way that evokes a lot of empathy.
Well, the original book, she is not meant to be
Right.
empathized with.
She has
she
stepped
is
outside the bounds, and
well, like Jane Austen, love her to death, but she can be very cutting. She can be very much like I there is no gray
no,
area
she's
here.
not advocating that the rules change. She's advocating that people follow the rules.
But one of the things that our show did was, with the quasi removal of Mary and Kitty, is that you put Lydia much closer to Lizzie. Like, just by virtue of the fact that there aren't two other sisters in between them. There aren't other, like, Lydia is always paired with Kitty previously. So
she's more isolated here too.
She's more isolated, but she's also more yours. You are more invested in your relationship with Lydia, as opposed to sort of being like
right. In the novel, we don't really get the sense that they kind of feel close at all.
No, she's this 15-year-old who's annoying
she's
you.
This other person in the house.
Yeah. So that's how the Lydia stuff really feels different in this show, is that she's more emotionally close, and we understand her better. And she got her own spin-off series and her own novel because of it, because people wanted closure to that storyline.
Indeed. But I'll bring us back to this episode by having us take a quick look at the comments, because that's always fun. Kathleen Villanueva says, fans always imagine Darcy's reaction to what Lizzie says in the vlogs, but can you imagine his reaction to what Jane says? Not only was she super sweet and devoted to his best friend, Jane was always trying to make Lizzie see past her prejudice of Darcy. She tries to make Lizzie see Darcy actually likes her, and she even has fun portraying him in a more flattering way than Lizzie does. If I were him, I'd feel like I killed a bucket of puppies when I get to the later videos, knowing that I did that to angelic Jane. I'd be kicking myself. Truly, we don't...
Fair, he should have.
Yeah. I mean, every version of Pride and Prejudice is basically saying that Darcy did a bad thing there.
Yeah, that is one of his sins that he has to atone for. And he does.
Indeed. Lou Belsky says Lizzie is more like her mom than she thinks. Oh, it hurts, but it's true.
It's on purpose. We are all more like our mothers than we think.
Crystal Jai speaking for us all, saying, I never get tired of Jane's version of Darcy, LOL. It's so
Honestly,
true.
No one does.
No one does. We could have had so much more. Shannon Smith, oh my God, when they're playing Darcy and George and they look at each other, I died from laughter. Well, we're sorry that you're dead, but we also think it's a good moment. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing so many insights into things that have not been discussed before on the Look Back Diary.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to see you.